Instead of having to look for maybe a couple of 1 hour trades, what I decided to do was risk the morning profit. Also had a little bit of a scalp profitable on the trade, and basically say if this trade works, I'm going to make anywhere from, let's say, 5 to 10 R. If it doesn't work, I'm going to give back the morning profit and probably be down daily max loss. So it's kind of an all or nothing scenario here given my risk profile. And that's not typical trading. It's not something I want to do every single day. It's very sort of heart palpitating. You're definitely focused in very intently. It's not a very calm style of trading. But if you get it right, and if you do it well, you can actually get some really good risk to reward positions. Hello, my name is Jared. I'm a moderator with Bearable Traders, and I wanted to do a recap of my trades on March 29th, 2022. So, traded the morning session with Thor in the chat room. Focused in on AMC, kind of my main on my watch list. Had a couple of other stocks I was keeping an eye on. But AMC had a really bullish previous session, big rally from 20 to 30. Looking for continuation, but daily chart did have some inflection candles, basically some topping tails for swing lows. And additionally, we were coming into the 200 day. So all in all, still long biased in the morning, but little cautionary. Wasn't really looking for a big trend, more just trying to get in, get out, and then maybe look for some scalps later in the session. Started off with an entry right around previous day close, buying up sort of the support on the morning. Started to notice that I was getting delays in fills. The chart wasn't printing where my entries were. So decided not to add, allowed that position to move, and actually scaled out a bit due to the issues. I wasn't sure if I was in sort of a good condition to trade if my platform was giving me some trouble. But we made it all the way up to R4, was able to partial out into that move. And then on the way back down, one thing that was a little concerning was the size of the retracement, and two, the speed. We basically found a relative top and then immediately started selling. So added back in what I thought was going to be more of a pullback buy area near VWAP. Had to bail during a halt down. So morning trade, profitable, gave a little bit back on the additional ads, but still playing with smaller size, mostly once my platform was giving me some trouble. And then AMC out of the halt, we came between about 28.50 and 30. Lots of buy-up candles, just very like quick movement in between those prices. So I took a quick scalp once I noticed that pattern. But overall, lots of chop, no real clear trend or anything. You can kind of see on the 5 minutes still pressing down, lots of topping action near previous day close. AMC then went into another sell swing, and this is where my main trade was involved. But I do need to clarify some of the technique here because it's not necessarily typical trading. AMC started to sell, and I was getting a little bit more risk on, getting a little bigger size. But as we started to break down and break that low, I realized that the sell swing was probably going to be a bit bigger than what my size allowed for. So first couple of entries, I was still long biased. I had to bail on some of that on a quick spike up, basically a little 50-cent move inside of the volatility. And what that allowed me to do is still remain engaged with the trade at a small position on. But instead of carrying large risk into the sell-off, I could continue to look for sort of a bottoming pattern. Went ahead and got back in around R2, approximately the 27 prints, maybe a little bit higher. So my average was coming down, but I was getting more position size. Definitely bit of a kind of average in approach, but my risk profile was also growing. I was not risking 1R anymore. I was actually kind of looking at about a 2 to 3R risk at this point. And then finally, AMC hit a level that I wanted to get to. I didn't think it would go there immediately without some bounces, but the volatility was quite high. And if we back this up, you can actually see on the 5 really clearly, this is the swing high from yesterday's session. It marked the low of today's session. So when we zoom in here, what I was essentially doing was adding my final position sizing, basically buying 100 share lots at this level. And it, once again, added to my risk profile, but instead of having to look for maybe a couple of 1R trades, what I decided to do was risk the morning profit. Also had a little bit of a scalp profitable on the trade. And basically say, if this trade works, I'm going to make anywhere from, let's say, 5 to 10R. If it doesn't work, I'm going to give back the morning profit and probably be down daily max loss. So it's kind of an all or nothing scenario here, given my risk profile. And that's not typical trading. It's not something I want to do every single day. It's very sort of heart palpitating. You're definitely focused in very intently. It's not a very calm style of trading, but if you get it right and if you do it well, you can actually get some really good risk to reward positions. So as you can see, I did find the bottom of AMC. I was able to hang in there just long enough, and due to my sizing, I was able to get my average at about 27.25, maybe a little bit lower. In all honesty, I kind of would have to look back and see exactly what my average was after those additions. So as AMC bounced, my main goal is risk management. I'm trying to actually scale out of a larger position. And the first profit or partial doesn't have to be profitable. The goal is that I'm still holding big size. And even if it doesn't necessarily get to my break even, I'm still trying to unwind profitable shares at the bottom. The 3 entries that I have at this level are actually profitable on the first bounce. So I unwound a little bit. That actually ended up being profitable due to the size of the bounce. And then from there, I just unwound larger risk, into the move of about 28.50. That was kind of my final partial. I held a 1R position, a smaller size or a normal size in most cases. And that allowed me to tolerate this back test or this pullback, 5-minute entry for a higher low. And AMC actually rallied into previous day close, the halt price at 29.07, and actually pushed much further. That's actually a bit rare. Usually the halts will give it a little bit of trouble, but AMC just went right through it. So my last little entry and exit was just kind of scaling into the breakout, just a little bit more in my size, and then finally getting to my all-out target right next to previous day close. That's where I wanted to get with this trade. So all in all, I wanted to look at this trade from what I did. And what I did, of course, was very risk-on, very aggressive, definitely kind of trusting a little bit of the volatility to save what was an aggressive long. But also look at it holistically. What can you do if you want to take these trades and you're not willing to scale into weakness? Well, first and foremost, you have to let the stock bottom. So at your most aggressive, you want to kind of look at some of these entries here and say, okay, bottoming action, indecision, 1-minute candles, very aggressive still. And AMC can move in about 50 cent to $1 intervals. So if you're getting long down here, you kind of need to be thinking about that in your sizing. But you have a good reason to get long. It's the support or the resistance turn support. So we're basically testing this swing high from last session. We're back testing it. That's one way to consider it. You can also look at just that 1 minute sort of breakout, the first sort of green candles off of a relative low. You can look at trend lines. That's another good way to kind of consider whether or not this is going to be a relative bottom. And that, of course, is going to look like, if I can grab my trend line, something like that. So that's one way you can do it. Nothing wrong with that. These are all viable ways to look for relative lows and basically try and capture some of the bounce. Another thing you can do is actually wait until the first bounce happens, because you don't really know how high it's going to go. It might actually be a pretty weak bounce. And in those cases, if you're sized in like I was a little high, you might actually have to tolerate some additional volatility and some more pain before it moves in your favor. So one thing you could do is actually look for the 5 minute setup. AMC, of course, bounced off of this low, and then we had a 5 minute higher low. So another thing to consider is maybe getting long here, obviously looking for maybe a bigger move, and you're coming back into resistance points for the chart, but you know that that absolute low should be set. You don't necessarily want to tolerate much more downside. And what you can often do is just put your stop not at the lows, but often at the weakest candle before the low was set, which in this case was this breakdown candle in the 5. The bottom here is about 27.14. So another way to kind of evaluate getting into the trade, for me, I could have even added at this point if I really wanted to, but I kind of walked away, with my profit on the day. It was a really aggressive long. Ended up making, close to 10R on that trade, which, once again, just kind of calling out, I took a 5R risk. So a 10R winner on a 5R risk is really like a 2R winner with a 1R risk. It's equivalent, and I just happen to be sized in more heavily. So definitely a good trade, good technique. Main thing here is that you don't have to be first. Often you can let a stock bottom, find its level, and then from there play around the level, look for setups that engage with that relative low, and then obviously look for different signals, different patterns or just breakouts of different trend lines. So all in all, this was my AMC trade on the day. Walked away, with that good profitability. And then I took a little PLTR trade, just kind of buying 1375. Was seeing a lot of good strength in like Hood, Roku, a lot of ARK ETF type products. Some really good sort of daily breakout levels that PLTR was starting to test. Bought at 1375, which is R4. Risked 1365, so about a 10-cent stop. Made it to 2R, so took some profit. Made it above 14, took some profit. And then, just looking at this last profit here, this last partial, really no reason to sell it here. Very mild sort of testing of the high of day. PLTR actually went to my final target, which was this weekly high. So it's basically the 1425. This is a good lesson of just kind of sticking with something that's working. In this case, I could have left it on, made another R.5 approximately. Smaller size, but at that point, no risk. So what's the reason for selling? Can't really explain it to you. More just about having a good day, locking in the profit, and unfortunately missing the final wave of PLTR's breakout. So that's pretty much it. As always, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about the trades that I took, especially some of the detail with AMC, feel free to leave a comment. I'll look back and answer those questions as needed. And as always, hopefully you had a great trading session. We'll see you in the chat room.